My name is Ned Williams, 70 years old, retired civil engineer from Michigan. I never thought my own flesh and blood would deceive me about our family vacation. The shock of seeing those cruise photos on Instagram still makes my heart sink. When my son asked for $120,000 just 3 weeks later, something in me finally broke free. Cutting him off financially was the hardest decision I ever made, but it gave me something unexpected: freedom, a chance to reclaim my life on my own terms. If you are watching this, let me know where you are tuning in from in the comments below. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories that might just help you find your own strength when facing family betrayal. I spent 45 years as a civil engineer, working on bridges, highways, and infrastructure projects across the Midwest. My hands helped build the skyline of Detroit, reinforced the roads you drive on through Illinois, and designed water systems serving millions. It was honest work that paid well enough to support my family and save for retirement. Nothing fancy, just the American dream of working hard and building something that lasts. Margaret and I were married for 42 beautiful years before cancer took her from me 5 years ago. She was the love of my life, my high school sweetheart from Westland High. We met in chemistry class when I accidentally spilled hydrochloric acid on her notebook. Instead of getting angry, she laughed and said it was the most interesting way anyone had ever tried to get her attention. That was Margaret, always finding light in darkness. Our only son Frank came along after 7 years of trying. Margaret had 3 miscarriages before Frank, so when he arrived, healthy and strong, it felt like a miracle. I still remember holding him in the hospital, this tiny person with my chin and his mother's eyes, promising him the world. Frank was our everything. I taught him to throw a baseball, ride a bike, change oil in a car. Margaret taught him kindness, reading, and how to make her famous apple pie. He was a good student, played varsity basketball, and got a full scholarship to Michigan State for business. Frank met Diana during his senior year of college. She came from a wealthy family that owned a successful real estate empire in New York. The Parkinsons had properties in Manhattan, Long Island, and were expanding across the Northeast. Diana was beautiful, educated at private schools, and had a degree in marketing. When Frank brought her home to meet us, Margaret and I were impressed by her politeness, though we noticed she seemed a bit uncomfortable in our modest home. After graduation, Frank went to work for the Parkinson family business. He and Diana got married in a lavish ceremony that her parents paid for. Margaret and I contributed what we could, but it was clear we were out of our league financially. The wedding was featured in some New York society magazine, with 500 guests at a Hampton estate. Our contribution barely covered the flowers. Over time, Frank changed. He became more distant, calling less frequently, visiting only on major holidays. Margaret noticed it before I did: the way he checked his watch during visits, how he compared our lifestyle unfavorably to his in-laws, the subtle criticisms about my career choices or our modest home. Margaret would say, "He is just finding his way, Ned. Give him time." So I did. During those years, I continued working and saving. I put aside money systematically, building a retirement fund of $450,000 through careful planning and modest living. Not a fortune by today's standards, but enough for Margaret and me to enjoy our golden years together, or so we thought. Our house in Heartland Township is nothing special, just a 3-bedroom ranch-style home on half an acre. We bought it 30 years ago for $90,000. It is paid off now, one of the wisest financial decisions we ever made. I have kept it well maintained, with a vegetable garden in the back that Margaret started and I continue to tend. The neighborhood is filled with families and retirees like me, people who wave when they walk by and bring over casseroles when someone is sick. After Margaret passed, I threw myself into volunteer work at the local Veterans Center. I am not a veteran myself, but my father served in Korea and my uncle in Vietnam. I do maintenance work, organize their filing system, and drive elderly vets to medical appointments. It gives structure to my weeks and purpose to my days. I also joined the community choir and a weekly poker game with 4 other widowers. We play for pennies, but the conversation and camaraderie are priceless. Margaret made me promise something in her final days. She held my hand in the hospital bed we had set up in our living room and said, "Always look after Frank and the grandchildren. No matter what happens, they are your family. They are what remains of me in this world." I swore I would, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. Emma and Jack, my grandchildren, were 5 and 3 when Margaret died. Such beautiful children, Emma with Margaret intelligent eyes and Jack with her musical laugh. Despite the distance, both physical and emotional, I tried to be present in their lives. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts, tried to video call weekly, and visited when invited, though invitations became increasingly rare. Retirement was supposed to be about family time. Margaret and I had planned trips to the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, the redwood forests of California, places we had postponed seeing while raising a family and building careers. After she died, those dreams seemed empty without her, until I realized I could create new memories with Frank and his family instead. The annual family vacation tradition started in the dark days after Margaret's diagnosis. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the kind that gives you months, not years. When we got the news, we gathered our family close. Frank, Diana, and the grandchildren came to stay for a week. During that time, Margaret suggested we take a trip together to the Florida Keys, a place she had always wanted to see. Despite her declining health, that trip was magical. We rented a beachfront house, watched dolphins from the deck, and Margaret collected seashells with the grandchildren. In the evenings, we played board games and shared stories about our lives. For those 7 days, the cancer seemed distant, and we were just a family enjoying each other's company. On our last night in Florida, Margaret made us all promise to continue the tradition every year. "Even when I am gone," she said, "you will all still have each other. It will keep our family bonds strong." We all agreed through tears, and for the past 4 years, we had kept that promise. We went to the Smoky Mountains, Washington, D.C., and the California coast. Each trip funded primarily by me, but rich with moments I treasured. This year's trip was special. It was to celebrate my 70th birthday with an Alaskan cruise, a dream Margaret and I had shared. I had researched for months, reading online reviews, joining cruise forums, and collecting brochures. I selected Holland America Line for their reputation with seniors and exceptional glacier viewing opportunities. I had set aside $22,000 specifically for this trip, enough to cover the entire family expenses. I booked 3 adjoining cabins with balconies, wanting everyone to have the perfect view of the passing glaciers and potential wildlife sightings. I researched and pre-booked excursions, glacier helicopter tours, dog sledding experiences, and a wildlife expedition where we might see bears, moose, and eagles. For the grandchildren, I found special kid-friendly nature programs where they could earn junior ranger badges. Shopping for the trip brought me such joy. I bought cold weather gear for Emma and Jack, waterproof boots, insulated gloves, and matching red parkas with reflective trim. I found binoculars for each of them, the perfect size for small hands but with good optics for wildlife viewing. I even got them field guides about Alaskan animals and plants, which we reviewed during our weekly video calls leading up to the trip. Those planning calls with Frank were a highlight of my weeks. Every Sunday evening, we would discuss itinerary details, which restaurants to try, which ports offered the best shopping, how to maximize our time in each location. Frank seemed genuinely engaged, asking questions about the ship amenities and suggesting activities. Diana occasionally joined these calls, particularly interested in the shopping opportunities in each port. As a special surprise, I had created a photo album of our previous family trips. I spent weeks gathering pictures, writing captions, and arranging them chronologically. The album started with that first trip to the Florida Keys with Margaret and continued through all our subsequent adventures. The final pages were left blank, ready for the Alaskan cruise memories we would create. I wrapped it carefully with a note explaining it was to be opened on my birthday dinner aboard the ship. The Northern Lights were my personal dream. Though not guaranteed in May, there was a possibility we might glimpse them. I had read countless articles about camera settings for aurora photography and practiced with my new digital camera, wanting to capture the moment perfectly if we were blessed with a sighting. The thought of standing on the deck with my family, watching those dancing lights in the sky, brought tears to my eyes whenever I imagined it. My neighbor Tom agreed to watch my house during our 2-week absence. He would collect mail, water Margaret Garden, and keep an eye on things. Tom and his wife Sharon had been our friends for 20 years, and I trusted them completely. Tom even helped me install a new security light before my departure, joking that bears might follow me home from Alaska. On my refrigerator door, I kept a countdown calendar, crossing off days leading to our departure with childlike anticipation. Each morning, I would mark another day while drinking my coffee, imagining the adventures ahead. 60 days, 30 days, 2 weeks, my excitement building with each passing day. For my birthday celebration on the ship, I had reserved a private dining room. The cruise line offered a special package with personalized menus, a custom cake, and champagne toast. I worked with their event coordinator, selecting dishes that everyone would enjoy, making sure they had booster seats for the grandchildren, and requesting a table by the window so we could watch the sunset over the glaciers while we celebrated. In the month before departure, I barely slept from excitement. I made packing lists, checked weather forecasts daily, and read everything I could find about Alaska. I even practiced taking photos of birds at my backyard feeder, wanting to perfect my skills before the trip. My suitcase stood ready in the corner of my bedroom, gradually filling with carefully selected items as departure day approached. 2 weeks before our scheduled departure, my phone rang around 8 in the evening. It was Frank, his voice tense and apologetic. "Dad," he said, "I have some really bad news. We have to cancel the Alaska trip." I felt my stomach drop as he continued to explain. According to Frank, his business was experiencing serious cash flow problems. 3 major clients had failed to pay their invoices, creating a financial crisis for his department. His voice cracked as he described the situation, saying he was working 16-hour days trying to resolve it, but had barely slept in a week. "We just cannot afford the time or money for a vacation right now," he explained. "I am so sorry to disappoint you, especially on your birthday trip." The details he provided were convincing. Frank mentioned specific clients by name, the amounts they owed, and the steps he was taking to recover the funds. He described meetings with lawyers, calls with bank officers, and the stress it was placing on their marriage. His voice had that ragged edge of exhaustion that made every word feel authentic. "Diana might have to sell some of her jewelry," he confided. "It is that serious, Dad." My immediate response was to offer help. I told Frank not to worry about the cruise cost since I had already covered it. I offered to loan him whatever he needed to get through this rough patch. "Take 10,000, 20,000, whatever you need," I said. "I can transfer it tomorrow." But Frank refused, saying the issue went beyond just money. "They are threatening to lay off staff in my department if we cannot get these accounts current," he explained. "I cannot leave right now. I need to be here, making calls, sending emails, finding solutions. If I am gone for 2 weeks, I might not have a job when I return." He sounded genuinely distressed, and my heart ached for him. The next morning, Diana called to confirm the situation. Her normally confident voice sounded strained as she described their financial worries. "We might have to pull the kids from their private school," she said, tears evident in her voice. "This could affect their college funds, too. Everything is so uncertain right now." She expressed how disappointed the children were, especially since they had been counting down the days. That afternoon, I received tearful calls from both grandchildren. Emma, now 10, was mature enough to try to hide her disappointment, saying, "It is okay, Grandpa, we can go another time." But 8-year-old Jack broke down completely, sobbing that he had already told all his friends about seeing whales and glaciers. Their genuine sadness convinced me beyond any doubt that the situation was as serious as Frank and Diana had described. With a heavy heart, I began the process of canceling all our arrangements. The cruise line charged a 30% cancellation fee this close to departure, nearly $7,000 lost. I also had to cancel the excursions, some of which were non-refundable. All told, I lost nearly $9,000, but money seemed insignificant compared to my family struggles. The week that should have been our vacation arrived with painful awareness. Instead of waking up in a ship cabin to views of the Alaskan coastline, I woke in my empty house to silence. I tried to keep busy, spending extra hours in the garden, tackling home repair projects I had been putting off, and attending additional volunteer shifts at the Veterans Center. Still, the disappointment lingered like a physical presence. My friends noticed the change in my demeanor. Bill and Sarah Wilson, our neighbors for 30 years and among our closest friends, invited me to dinner that weekend to cheer me up. Over Sarah's excellent pot roast, I explained the situation with Frank and the canceled trip. Bill listened thoughtfully, but Sarah frowned slightly when I mentioned Diana's parents. "That is odd," she said, setting down her fork. "I ran into Diana's mother Elaine at Somerset Collection Mall last week. She was shopping for cruise clothes. Said something about Alaska weather being tricky to pack for. I immediately defended my son, explaining that Diana's parents might still be going on a cruise, just not our family cruise. Maybe they booked something separately, I suggested. Sarah nodded but exchanged a glance with Bill that made me uncomfortable. "No, Frank would never lie to me about something like this," I insisted when Bill gently suggested I check the story. "Frank is under tremendous pressure right now. The last thing he needs is his father doubting him." Sarah reached over and patted my hand, changing the subject to the community garden project she was organizing. But the seed of doubt had been planted, however unwelcome. I spent that night tossing and turning, Sarah's words echoing in my mind. The next morning I called Frank, ostensibly to check on the business situation but really to reassure myself. He sounded harried, talking about urgent meetings and banking negotiations. When I casually mentioned running into someone who knew Diana's parents, he quickly changed the subject, asking about my blood pressure medication. By the end of the call, I had convinced myself that my momentary doubt was shameful. Frank was my son. Of course he was telling the truth. 3 days later, Bill came by with a cherry pie from Sarah and an uncertain look on his face. After some uncomfortable small talk on the porch, he pulled out his smartphone. "I want to show you something, Ned," he said carefully, "but I need you to prepare yourself. It might be upsetting." I rarely used social media. Margaret and I had created Facebook accounts years ago to see pictures of the grandchildren, but after she passed, I seldom logged in. Technology moved too quickly for me to keep up with all the new platforms. Instagram was just a word I had heard Emma mention during video calls. Bill pulled up Diana's Instagram account on his phone and handed it to me. The first image showed Frank, Diana, Emma, and Jack boarding a cruise ship. They were smiling broadly, vacation excitement evident on their faces. The caption read, "Alaska bound, family adventure time." The post was dated May 15th, our original departure date. My hands began to shake as I scrolled through dozens of vacation pictures. There they were, my family, enjoying the exact cruise I had planned and paid for. Diana had documented their entire journey. Stunning photos of massive glaciers. The family bundled in their new cold weather gear on deck. Emma and Jack wearing the Junior Ranger badges from the exact excursion I had booked. One photo particularly stabbed at my heart. Frank and the children on a helicopter tour of Mendenhall Glacier, an expensive excursion I had specifically researched and planned as a highlight of our trip. They were wearing the matching red parkas I had purchased, their faces alight with wonder as they posed on the gleaming blue ice. The timestamp confirmed they were there during our originally planned dates. Diana's social media was filled with comments from her wealthy friends about their amazing family time. Had the best couples massage at the ship spa, so needed this getaway, living our best life. The captions were punctuated with hashtags about luxury travel and creating memories. In all the dozens of posts, there was not a single mention of me or my birthday. It was as if I had never been part of the plan. My stomach churned with nausea as the betrayal sank in. I handed the phone back to Bill, unable to look at more. My mind raced backward, reviewing recent interactions with Frank and his family, searching for missed clues. The detailed financial crisis story, Diana confirmation call, even the children tears, All had been orchestrated deception. The level of planning required for such a lie was staggering. After Bill left, promising to check on me later, I sat motionless in my recliner for hours. When I finally roused myself, I called the cruise line, using our original reservation information. Yes, the cheerful representative confirmed. The Williams party had been aboard. 4 passengers, 3 excursions, and a specialty dining package. No, there had been no cancellation or change to the original booking I had made. The ship had returned to port 3 days ago. The betrayal deepened when I learned from mutual acquaintances that Frank had told several people I had declined to join their family vacation due to health concerns. He had apparently said, "Dad heart isn't strong enough for Alaska altitude," which made no medical sense but sounded plausible to those who didn't know better. He had transformed my generosity into a fabricated weakness, using my imaginary health as cover for excluding me from my own planned celebration. With growing dread, I reviewed my financial records from the past few years. A pattern emerged that I had been too trusting to notice. Frank requests for money had increased in frequency and amount. $10,000 for home repairs, $15,000 for an investment opportunity, $20,000 toward the Children Education Fund. Each request accompanied by plausible explanations and followed by minimal accountability. In the most painful moment of my investigation, I found photos on my computer from last year's family vacation to San Diego. There was a picture of Frank on his phone while everyone else built a sandcastle. Zooming in, I could make out a text conversation on his screen, partially visible. "Got another $10K from Dad for the Beach House Fund. That brings us to 50. Only need 30 more. The timestamp showed it was taken minutes after I had given him cash I thought was for Emma's swimming lessons. The following day, Tom came by to return a ladder he had borrowed. As we chatted, he casually mentioned seeing Frank family leave with luggage on May 15th. "I thought they were picking you up," he said. "When I saw Diana parents' car in your driveway too, I figured they were all going together to the airport." That confirmed what I already knew: the entire extended family had participated in the deception, including Diana parents who likely knew about or even helped plan the exclusion. That night, I pulled out the photo album I had created for my birthday gift. I sat alone at my kitchen table, slowly turning pages of family memories that now seemed tainted by hidden agendas. Had Frank been calculating potential financial gain during those moments I had treasured? Had those happy faces concealed contempt or impatience? The weight of these questions crushed something fundamental inside me, a faith in family I had never questioned until now. 3 weeks after the family returned from Alaska, Frank appeared at my door unannounced on a Saturday afternoon. He was holding an expensive bottle of wine and wearing the confident smile I had once been so proud of. Looking at him standing on my porch, I felt a strange detachment, as if observing a stranger wearing my sun face. I invited him in anyway. We settled in the living room, Frank sprawling comfortably on the sofa as he had countless times before. He talked casually about work, the children activities, and local sports, carefully avoiding any mention of vacations or travel. I noticed he kept checking his watch, an $18,000 Breitling that Diana parents had given him for Christmas. It struck me that its value exceeded what many of my retired friends lived on for 6 months. After about 20 minutes of superficial conversation, Frank shifted forward on the sofa, his expression becoming more focused. "Dad, the real reason I came by today is to discuss an incredible opportunity that has come up." His voice took on the enthusiastic tone he reserved for financial requests. "I have been approached about an exclusive investment opportunity that is perfect for someone in your position." Frank launched into an elaborate explanation of a real estate development project in Nashville. He described luxury condominiums near the downtown entertainment district, using terms like guaranteed returns and limited investor pool. According to him, the projected return was 30% within 18 months, with quarterly dividend payments beginning after just 6 months. It was presented as a favor, allowing me to participate in a deal normally reserved for high net worth individuals through his connection with Diana family. The catch, of course, was timing. This opportunity required immediate action. "They need commitments by Friday," he explained. leaning forward intently. The minimum investment is $120,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but this is absolutely the best use of your retirement savings right now, Dad. This is the kind of deal most people never get access to. Instead of my usual immediate agreement, I began asking questions. What was the name of the development company? Who were the other investors? Had the project received proper zoning clearances? Could I see the prospectus and financial projections? Each question seemed to catch Frank off guard, and I watched his confident demeanor waver as he provided increasingly vague answers. "It is all happening very quickly," he said, shifting uncomfortably when I asked for documentation. "The papers are being drawn up now. I can get you copies next week, but we need to secure your spot immediately." His voice took on an edge of impatience I had heard before but never recognized for what it was, the frustration of a con man whose mark is asking too many questions. After letting him talk himself into several contradictions, I finally asked the question that had been hanging between us. "So, Frank, how was Alaska?" The color drained from his face as his explanation stumbled to a halt. His eyes darted to the door as if calculating an escape route. "What do you mean?" he stammered, buying time. "We canceled Alaska, remember? The business situation." His voice trailed off as he saw the knowledge in my eyes. "I saw the Instagram posts, Frank," I said quietly. "I saw all of you on the exact cruise I planned and paid for. I saw you celebrating on the exact dates we were supposed to go together. I saw the helicopter glacier tour I researched for months. I saw the children wearing the clothes I bought them. What I did not see was any mention of me or my 70th birthday, which was the whole purpose of the trip." Frank shifted strategies with the speed of someone accustomed to lying. "It was a last-minute thing, Dad," he claimed, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "A business associate offered us their booking when they couldn't go. We didn't want to make you feel bad after you had already canceled everything. It was actually a work thing, networking with industry people who happened to be on the same cruise." I let the absurdity of his explanation hang in the air between us. We both knew cruise bookings couldn't be transferred to different names without substantial fees and paperwork. We both knew the matching dates and identical itinerary couldn't be coincidental. We both knew he was lying, again. When I remained silent, Frank finally abandoned pretense. "Look," he said, his voice hardening, "you don't need the money like we do. You live in this little house, drive a 10-year-old car, and have simple needs. We are trying to maintain a certain lifestyle. The private schools, the country club membership, the summer house rental, it all costs money. The Parkinsons have expectations about how their daughter and grandchildren should live." The casual cruelty of his assessment struck me like a physical blow. I was nothing more than a financial resource to him, an ATM with increasingly limited usefulness as I aged. The vacation exclusion suddenly made perfect sense, a cost-benefit analysis that determined I wasn't worth the social awkwardness I might cause among Diana wealthy friends. When I asked how long they had been planning to go without me, Frank admitted the deception had been arranged weeks in advance. They had never intended to include me. The elaborate lie about business problems had been constructed specifically to make me cancel the reservations myself, saving them the cancellation fees while still benefiting from my careful planning and research. In that moment, with absolute clarity, I made my decision. "No," I said simply. "I will not be investing in your Nashville project or any other project. If you need $120,000, perhaps you should ask Diana family. I understand they have substantial resources." Frank stared at me in genuine shock. In all our adult interactions, I had never refused him anything financial. The concept appeared foreign to him, as if a law of nature had been unexpectedly suspended. "But I just told you," he sputtered. "This is an amazing opportunity with guaranteed returns." I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "The only guarantee," I said, "is that I would never see that money again. Just like I will never see the $9,000 I lost on cruise cancellation fees. Our meeting is over, Frank. I think you should leave now." His shock quickly transformed into anger. "This is about the stupid cruise," he demanded, voice rising. "Are you seriously holding a grudge over a vacation when I am trying to help you make money? This is why Mom always said you were small-minded, too focused on little things to see the big picture." The lie about Margaret, who had never spoken an unkind word about me in our 42 years together, was the final straw. "I want you to leave my house right now," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "And I want you to understand something clearly. I will not be providing you with any more money. Not for investments, not for the children's schools, not for anything. That chapter of our relationship is over." Frank stood, his face flushed with anger. "You are making a huge mistake," he warned. "This is going to change everything between us. I might have been able to arrange visits with Emma and Jack before, but if you are going to be difficult about money, Diana parents will side with us. You might not see your grandchildren again if you do this." Using the children as leverage was calculated cruelty, but it confirmed I was making the right decision. "I am sorry you feel that way," I replied. "Please leave now, or I will call the police to report an unwelcome visitor." The threat was a bluff, but it worked. Frank stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the family photos on the wall. After Frank left, I collapsed into Margaret recliner, my entire body shaking. The confrontation had drained me completely, leaving me feeling hollow and ancient. For the first time since her funeral, I sobbed openly, grieving not just the loss of my wife, but now the loss of my son as well. The son I had known, or thought I knew, was gone, replaced by a stranger who viewed me only as a financial resource. When I could breathe normally again, I called Bill. He arrived 30 minutes later with a bottle of bourbon and the steady presence of a friend who asks no questions but simply sits with you in your pain. I told him everything: the confrontation, frank admission, and the threat about the grandchildren. Bill listened, occasionally nodding, his weathered face reflecting my own heartbreak. "What are you going to do now?" he finally asked as evening shadows lengthened across my living room floor. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not giving him the money, and I'm not going to let this happen again." The next morning, I made an appointment with Carolyn Braxton, the financial advisor who had helped Margaret and me plan for retirement. Carolyn's expression grew increasingly concerned as I explained the situation and asked her to review all my accounts for any unusual activity. Her computer search revealed something disturbing. There had been multiple unauthorized information requests on my accounts in recent months, attempts to access statements and balance information. "Mr. Williams," Carolyn said carefully, "it appears someone has been researching all your assets. They've tried to get information on your retirement accounts, certificates of deposit, even your home equity. The pattern suggests a coordinated effort to assess your total net worth. When I asked who would have enough personal information to attempt this, we both knew the answer without speaking it aloud." That afternoon, I met with James Hoffman, an elder law attorney Bill had recommended. James' office was warm and unpretentious, with family photos on his desk and legal volumes lining the walls. I explained my situation, showing him the Instagram posts on Bill's phone as evidence of the deception and outlining my concerns about future financial exploitation. "Unfortunately, Mr. Williams, your situation is one I see with increasing frequency," James said, removing his reading glasses. "Adult children who view their parents' retirement savings as their inheritance in advance." He outlined a protection strategy: changing accounts, passwords, security questions, and creating a new estate plan with different beneficiaries. "We need to assume that any information Frank once had access to is compromised," he explained. "We'll need to change everything." Over the next 2 weeks, I followed James' advice methodically. I moved my savings to a new bank where Frank had no relationships. I changed all my passwords to complex combinations of letters, numbers, and symbols, recording them in a notebook I kept in my safe. I updated security questions on all accounts to information Frank wouldn't know, using facts from my childhood rather than shared family history. With James' guidance, I established an education trust for Emma and Jack with strict controls. The money could only be used for college tuition and related expenses, paid directly to educational institutions. Frank and Diana would have no access to these funds under any circumstances. A trusted friend, not Frank, was named as successor trustee in case of my death or incapacity. I also changed my will and advanced directives, removing Frank as my healthcare proxy and power of attorney. Instead, I designated Bill, with Sarah as backup. I updated my living will with specific instructions about end-of-life care, ensuring Frank could not make financial decisions under the guise of medical necessity. The new estate plan directed most of my assets to charitable organizations, with education trusts for the grandchildren as the only family bequests. One practical step I hadn't anticipated was changing my house locks. James pointed out that Frank likely still had a spare key, creating both financial and physical vulnerability. The locksmith who installed new deadbolts looked puzzled when I explained I was keeping my son out, not burglars, but he completed the work without comment. The solid click of the new locks was both reassuring and profoundly sad. The changes I made triggered an immediate reaction. My phone began filling with voicemails and texts from Frank, alternating between anger, guilt trips, and attempts at reconciliation. Diana called multiple times daily until I blocked her number. They even enlisted mutual acquaintances to reach out, creating elaborate stories about misunderstandings and family healing. The most manipulative messages involved the children. Frank sent recordings of Emma and Jack asking why Grandpa was mad at them, their little voices clearly coached to maximize emotional impact. Emails arrived with subject lines like, "Last chance to see Jack baseball game," or "Emma asking for Grandpa at graduation." Each one tested my resolve, but James had warned me to expect exactly these tactics. The most surprising development was a visit from Diana parents, Edward and Elaine Parkinson. They appeared at my door one Tuesday morning, dressed impeccably and wearing expressions of concerned authority. Edward launched into a practiced speech about family unity and intergenerational responsibilities, while Elaine nodded emphatically beside him. "Ned," Edward said, using my first name with presumptuous familiarity. "Families like ours have responsibilities to the next generation. My father helped me establish my business, and I've helped Frank and Diana create the lifestyle appropriate for my daughter. It's the natural order of things." When I pointed out that their family wealth vastly exceeded my modest savings, making the comparison inappropriate, Edward waved this away as irrelevant. "It's not about amounts, Ned. It's about commitment to family legacy." Their visit ended abruptly when I asked directly about their role in excluding me from the Alaska cruise. Elaine color heightened, and Edward checked his watch, suddenly remembering another appointment. As they hurried to their luxury SUV, I realized they had known and approved of the deception all along, perhaps even suggested it. In their worldview, I was merely an inconvenient appendage to their daughter family, useful for financial contributions but embarrassing in social contexts. Following James' recommendation, I joined a support group for parents of estranged adult children. The stories I heard there were both heartbreaking and validating. Men and women, many my age or older, shared experiences of manipulation, deception, and financial exploitation by their adult children. One 82-year-old woman had been persuaded to sell her home and give the proceeds to her son for a business venture that never materialized. She now lived in subsidized senior housing while he vacationed in Europe. The support group connected me with Dr. Teresa Yamamoto, a therapist specializing in elder family issues. In our sessions, Dr. Yamamoto helped me process the complex grief of losing my relationship with Frank while he was still alive. "It's a disenfranchised grief," she explained. "Society doesn't have rituals or acknowledgement for the pain of having a living child who betrays you. You're mourning both the loss of the relationship you had and the relationship you deserve to have." As weeks passed, the situation escalated further. A certified letter arrived from Lawrence Greenfield, an attorney representing Frank and Diana. The letter cited alleged verbal promises I had made to provide financial support for the children, education, and family expenses. It demanded immediate restoration of regular financial gifts and access to my accounts for emergency purposes. The letter concluded with a thinly veiled threat about my continued access to Emma and Jack being contingent upon financial cooperation. James responded with a brief, devastating letter outlining the documented history of my generosity, the evidence of deception regarding the Alaska trip, and the legal principles protecting individuals from financial coercion. He attached copies of checks and transfers showing I had already contributed over $200,000 to Frank and his family in the past 5 years, none of which had been acknowledged as gifts in the demand letter. The response ended with a clear statement that any further attempts at financial pressure would result in legal action for elder abuse and harassment. The final step in securing my financial independence came when I froze the one account Frank knew still existed, a money market fund at my original bank. I didn't close it, as James suggested, keeping it as a monitored decoy. If anyone attempted to access it, we would have evidence of continued attempts at financial exploitation. The bank manager, after hearing a simplified version of my situation, added extra security protocols to the account and flagged it for special monitoring. As I walked out of the bank that day, I felt a strange mixture of profound sadness and unexpected lightness. The sadness was for all that had been lost: the relationship with my son, the precious time with my grandchildren, the family legacy Margaret and I had tried to build. But the lightness came from somewhere deeper, a reclamation of self-respect I hadn't realized was missing. For the first time in years, my financial decisions were truly my own, guided by my needs and values rather than manipulation and fear. The first months after cutting financial ties with Frank were among the hardest of my life. The grief felt eerily similar to when I lost Margaret, a comparison I shared with Dr. Yamamoto during one particularly difficult session. When Margaret died, I lost her physical presence but kept our shared love and memories intact. With Frank, his physical existence continued, but everything I thought we shared had been revealed as an illusion. In some ways, this second grief cut deeper. My house felt emptier than ever, the silence more profound without the regular calls from Frank about financial matters or plans involving the grandchildren. To fill the void, I began attending daily activities at the Heartland Senior Center, a place I had previously visited only occasionally. I signed up for morning coffee groups, afternoon card games, and weekly movie nights, less from interest than from fear of being alone with my thoughts. It was at the Senior Center Chess Club that I met Arthur Davidson, a retired physics professor whose son hadn't spoken to him in 12 years. Arthur didn't volunteer this information immediately. We had been playing weekly chess matches for nearly a month before he casually mentioned his son's upcoming wedding in response to someone else's family news. "I won't be attending, of course," Arthur said matter-of-factly, moving his bishop across the board. "Haven't seen him since he was 24. His fiancée seems nice from her social media. I hope they'll be happy." The simple dignity with which he acknowledged his situation without bitterness gave me hope that such peace was possible. After our match, I asked him to coffee, where I hesitantly shared my own situation. His response was simply, "Welcome to the club, nobody wants to join." Then he asked if I had tried the Senior Center cooking class. The cooking class became my unexpected salvation. Having relied on Margaret cooking during our marriage and simple bachelor fare after her death, I had never learned proper culinary skills. The Tuesday night basic cooking for beginners class was filled with widowers like me, men in their 60s and 70s learning to chop onions without cutting themselves. Our instructor, a patient retired chef named Gloria, treated us like competent adults while teaching us as if we were children, a balance that somehow preserved our dignity. As spring turned to summer, I made a decision. I would use the $22,000 originally earmarked for the Alaska cruise for myself. After consulting with a travel agent who specialized in senior travel, I booked a solo trip to the Grand Canyon, one of the destinations Margaret and I had planned to visit together. The thought of traveling alone terrified me, but the alternative, letting Frank theft of the Alaska experience prevent me from seeing the world, seemed worse. The Grand Canyon tour group consisted of 15 active seniors with similar life situations, many widowed or divorced, all traveling alone but seeking companionship. Our tour guide, Jason, was a 30-something geologist with boundless enthusiasm for rock formations and a genuine appreciation for his mature charges. He never rushed us, understood our need for regular bathroom breaks, and shared fascinating information about the canyon history and geology. Among the tour group was Patricia Reynolds, a 72-year-old widow from Oregon with silver hair, keen blue eyes, and a wicked sense of humor. She had been traveling solo for 5 years since losing her husband, hitting what she called the highlight reel of American natural wonders. We gravitated toward each other immediately, sharing meals and walking together along the canyon rim. Her practical approach to widowhood, neither maudlin nor falsely cheerful, resonated with me. "You know," Patricia said one evening as we watched the sunset paint the canyon walls in brilliant orange and red, "grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to carry. Some days it's a pebble in your pocket, barely noticeable. Other days it's a boulder on your chest, crushing the breath from you. But either way, you keep walking." Her words captured exactly what I had felt but couldn't articulate. Returning home from the Grand Canyon, I felt a shift in my perspective. The house that had seemed so empty now felt like a sanctuary, a space entirely my own, where no one could manipulate or deceive me. I began to appreciate the freedom of answering to no one, of making decisions based solely on my own preferences and needs. This newfound independence led me to volunteer at the county literacy program, teaching adult readers at the public library 3 afternoons a week. Many of my students were immigrants learning English, or adults who had fallen through educational cracks. Their determination to improve their lives despite obstacles humbled me and provided perspective on my own troubles. 5 months after our confrontation, Frank requested a meeting to reconcile. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. He arrived with a folder of financial documents, immediately launching into another investment proposal before I could even order my coffee. When I interrupted to say I wasn't there to discuss money, his expression revealed genuine confusion. "What else would we talk about?" he asked, and in that moment I saw clearly how transactional our relationship had become. I explained my terms for moving forward. I was open to rebuilding our relationship, but would never again provide financial support beyond the education trusts already established for the children. Any reconciliation would be based on genuine connection, not monetary exchange. Frank listened impatiently, fidgeting with his expensive watch. When I finished, he stood abruptly. "Call me when you're done being difficult," he said, leaving his coffee untouched. I watched him drive away in his luxury SUV, feeling sad but surprisingly unburdened. Frank and Diana chose to maintain their distance given my conditions. Occasionally, cards or school photos of the grandchildren would arrive, usually around holidays or my birthday. I responded with cards and appropriate gifts, sent directly to Emma and Jack, always including personal notes about my life and asking about theirs. Whether these communications actually reached them, I couldn't know, but I persisted in the hope of maintaining some connection, however tenuous. The most unexpected outcome of this painful chapter was the freedom it granted me. Without the constant drain of frank financial demands and the emotional manipulation that accompanied them, I discovered resources, both financial and emotional, that I hadn't realized were being depleted. I took a photography class, joined a hiking group for seniors, and even tried ballroom dancing lessons, something Margaret had always wanted us to do together. My friendship with Patricia evolved through letters, phone calls, and occasional visits. We weren't romantic in the traditional sense, but we provided each other companionship and understanding that enriched both our lives. She visited Michigan in the autumn to see the changing leaves, and I flew to Oregon in the spring when she had minor surgery and needed someone to drive her home from the hospital. We planned trips together to Yellowstone and the Redwood forests, checking destinations off Margaret and my old bucket list, but creating new memories rather than mourning lost opportunities. Through the senior center, I found a chosen family of loyal friends who valued me for myself, not for financial potential. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, shared meals and stories, and supported each other through health scares and losses. This circle of authentic relationships helped heal the wound left by frank betrayal, showing me that family could be defined by love and respect rather than merely by blood. During my second year of estrangement from Frank, I received an unexpected letter from Diana's mother, Elaine. Her husband, Edward, had suffered a severe stroke and was now partially paralyzed. The letter detailed their financial struggles with medical bills and home modifications, despite their apparent wealth. Reading between the lines, I recognized a familiar pattern: assets tied up in illiquid investments, appearances maintained at the expense of financial stability, and now a search for external resources in a crisis. I sent a polite card, wishing Edward a good recovery, but offered no financial assistance. As my 72nd birthday approached, I reflected on the painful journey since that Alaska cruise deception. The loss of my relationship with Frank and limited access to my grandchildren still brought moments of profound sadness. Yet I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and built a life richer in many ways than before. My financial security, protected from exploitation, now enabled genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than need or obligation. I had traveled to places I never thought I would see, developed new skills and interests, and found purpose in helping others through volunteering. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my self-worth, no longer measuring my value by what I could provide to others financially. The deepest lesson I learned through this painful journey was that my worth was never tied to my financial usefulness. For years, I had unconsciously believed that providing money was how I expressed love and secured my place in my family. Frank had exploited this belief, but the fault wasn't entirely his. I had participated in creating a relationship defined by financial transactions rather than authentic connection. Standing up for myself financially was the hardest decision I ever made, but it gave me the freedom to discover who I truly was apart from my role as provider. It allowed me to build relationships based on genuine care rather than obligation or manipulation. And it taught me that sometimes, loving yourself means setting boundaries with those who cannot or will not respect your worth beyond what you can give them. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that hurt in the moment, but ultimately led to unexpected freedom? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family, boundaries, and finding peace in your later years. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these painful journeys is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life and discover new joy, even after profound betrayal.